Okay,
Yes.
excellent.
Is it recording?
I
It's black. It's usually red.
yes, the red
Okay.
button's good. Hola mujeres, español es poquito, pero Rocío has printed out the papel en español. So pardonme if es mi español no bueno, pero hablas en inglés.
Yeah,
Primero.
you can speak English.
Preguntas,
We can speak English.
We all speak English.
Yes.
I believe.
Okay, okay.
We're bilingual.
Okay, excellent.
Una pregunta de sí, pregunta.
English. Okay, excellent. Well, I want to get better at my Spanish too, so I'm learning. All right, ladies, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you, Rocio, for introducing me to this amazing group, and Lillian for hosting, as well as Maria for the radio opportunity for promoting this event. Thank you so much. So my name is Andrea Mason, and I am the author of Victim to Victorious, which is a book that I wrote about my childhood growing up. I came to America at 11 months old during the cartel from Colombia. I have limited paperwork, no photographs, no medical records of my family. So my history is a blank slate. So what I have come to learn is that being authentic and the adversities in life can allow you the opportunity to create your own identity. I came to America into an Italian, Irish, American affluent family with unconditional love and, just priceless amenities to be where I am today. I discovered during my childhood that when I found out that I was adopted at 7 years old, my family shared with me that I was adopted. And they said, if you want to, you can locate your parents in Colombia. Little did we know we had limited paperwork and information about the family. The only document I did have was a legal document in Spanish and English saying that my mother would never reclaim me because she had physical impairments and was unable to care for herself, let alone her family. Through a median, I learned I do have several siblings in America, so that's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. However, I haven't come to the courage yet to explore that situation as I'm learning my own identity. So at the age of 7, I had shared with my classmates my neighborhood that I was adopted. And they said, wow, if you're adopted, your parents didn't like you. How are you going to be loved? How are you going to love somebody else? And that changed my mindset of being adopted. Because my parents said to me I was a gift, I was a treasure. And here I have outsiders saying that I was a tragedy, I was a mistake. I wasn't meant to be here, I couldn't love. So that was the downward spiral of learning how to trust, learning how to compete with my parents, who were affluent bankers on Wall Street, who were very well and had a strong sense of family. And so I started on the pathway of what the first step in what I call my business, Press Play, Plan Life According to You LLC. And it talks about self-discovery and self-awareness. And so that talks about understanding who you are. And in order to know where you are going, you first have to learn where you came from, learn from your roots. And all of us are multicultural beings if you really think about it. All of us here are different parts of the Hispanic and Latina community. Mm-hmm. But then if you look at generations before us and generations after us, it's all American. And we all come to America on this melting pot and have the ability to learn, connect, and adopt families. And I had done a speaking event in New York City last year at the Latino Travel Fest in New York City, 2023, where I found my family away from my family. I felt at home. My family welcomed me with open arms when I came back from that event, from that seminar that weekend, and said, you found your home. Not only did I come back with a harsh accent, but they said I came back elated. Like Lilian has said, I received the light from my familia, my Hispanic community. So that brings me to when I was going through academics in school, I had to work 10 times harder just to get by. Not only to absorb the information, but being the only different individual in the classroom. looking different, having different features, having to compare myself to children who looked like their parents, children who understood their ancestry and lineage, and knew the medical conditions. We don't think about that. We think about where we came from, the genetics and the upbringings of our family. But when you're someone like an adoptee, an orphan, a foster child, or somebody who's given up and they don't have paperwork, everything is trial and error. And luckily, fortunately, throughout my career, I have been successfully healthy. However, you'll read in the book, and as we get further in the session, that a lot of my conditions that have paralyzed me were that of autoimmune conditions. Why? Because it was my mind over matter that I wasn't good enough. I was trying to fill the void of something absent in my life, whether that was my family, whether that was finding love in the future, whether that was self-sabotage of not having high self-esteem. So what I decided to do as I was growing up in school, lunches were difficult for me. I would have the American lunch, just like everybody else, the standard PB&J. They didn't have allergies much back then. And when I would have my lunch, I would want to talk to people. I would want to learn about them because I just had no knowledge of me. I knew of my family, my adoptive family and their lineage, but I didn't know anything about myself. And so what happened was I got bullied. I got abused. I was shoved into lockers. I was thrown into trash cans. On the playground, I was never chosen to play an activity. I was never chosen to be on a team, never joined into the girls' circle because I was different. My surroundings of my family, I was the only girl cousin at that time. All of my cousins were males, Italian males, Irish males. So I grew up as a tomboy and having that tough, rugged, thick skin. And so when I did make friends who were girls, who were playing with dolls, who were doing the makeup, who were doing the dresses, it wasn't fit for me. Again, I was outcasted. I was isolated. I didn't fit in. So fast forward, after all of this mental experiences that I had, I was fearful to tell my parents. How could I tell successful parents who chose me, who gave me a second chance at life, that I was having a rough childhood? That although I was, what they say, given to the world on a silver platter, but never really could embrace it. I would cry myself to sleep at night. I would try to figure out what avenues I can do to get to fit in. So then I went into my mind. And that brings us to the second modality, which is la mente sobre la materia, which is mind over matter. It's not what's in your mind that matters in your mind, but it's the matter in your mind that matters most. So a lot of us has this focus on this comparative society that we live in. Someone's always living better, has more money, has more, privileges, has more opportunities for whatever reason. And that was really taking a toll on me. And I remember as I was going through life, I had to figure out what was my contribution. What could I do? I knew I could be more, I knew I could do more. And so my parents helped me reverse a little bit, go into the arts. So at 4 years old, I learned how to play the piano. I learned how to play the piano audibly by sound, then read the notes. Secondly, a few years later, I entered athletics, soccer, football, So I was appreciative because now I had a team I felt connected. Now I had camaraderie. I had the ability to connect with people. We were all on the same mission to win the game. So I was no longer a spectator watching my life pass by. Now I was a participant. And so when I had those outlets, it was really empowering to me that, wait a minute, now it's time for me to invest in myself. Now we talk about investments, about financial investments. We talk about investments of being time stricken. We talk about investments in contributing to our family, being the matriarchs. And as Latinas, we're the matriarchs of the whole world. We want to fix everything. We want to heal everybody. We want to love everybody. But who do we put last? Ourselves. And that's what happens. I started putting myself last once I realized I have a mission. I want to be the face of change in mental health. I want to be that Latina that came from a multicultural family and changed my adversities into my identity. So when I was asked in middle school what we wanted to do, I said, I want to do social work. I want to do psychology. But the little reel in my head of those kids, the naysayers, the non-believers, how are you going to do that? You barely made it through school. You barely made the grade. You had a struggle and you want to go into a prestigious field, learning about other people and barely making minimum wage? Because if you look at the statistics in social work and psychology, unless you get that PhD, your schooling doesn't even cover what you're making on an annual salary. And so I decided to make that change. Then I decided, which is Module 4.4, which is Crea tu propio emorano. Pardon me, this is a little bit smaller text than I thought. So create your own environment, number 4. So as I started to study social work and I started to study psychology, I started seeing different races. I started seeing different cultures. I started seeing different religions, beliefs, spirituality instead of religion, familia instead of stats. Socioeconomic status was the determining factor, then it would come demographics. So we were all stigmatized and labeled and compartmentalized in our own way. I wanted to change that. So when I went to social work and psychology, I worked my way over about a decade in that career. I started with the adolescents. I started working in shelters, homeless shelters. But my biggest eye-opening moment was a children's shelter. I'll never forget, I just got out of college and I was working in a youth center. And it was a shelter where kids who didn't make the grade at home, in school, would go there and live. I'll never forget doing an overnight shift. And around 2:30 in the morning, the bell rang. And this parent just dropped off 2 7-year-olds and said goodbye. And I think of that. And I just think they have a second opportunity at life here. But there's people like us that can make a difference. So I saw myself in those 7-year-olds. I saw them crying to their parents, why are you leaving me? You're right on the stoop. So I decided I was going to pursue this career. After I worked in the youth shelter center, I went to Sojourners, a women's shelter from 18 to 21 years old. They've already went through the foster schooling and the shelter life as it is for the first 18 years. But these were the outcasts. These were the rebels. These were the ones that were promiscuous. These are the ones that were getting into jail, getting into trouble. And what was crazy about it was when I worked with those women, despite my petite stature, they still respected me because I treated them like they were my family. And that's what I do. In the line of work that I've ever done in my life, I learned to follow my heart, not the herd, nor the hurt. And then I found success on the other side. Fast forward after that, I determined to then transition to working as a liaison in the judicial system. Unfortunately, hopefully that today's is a bit different, but what has happened is the judicial system sees you as a stigmatism, as a stat, as a financial checklist, as a paycheck for them, and as wasting their time. So what I decided to do as a liaison, I was going to these institutions, these juvenile detention centers, these prisons that were holding these individuals for a life sentence I treated them as family. That was probably the tail end of my career because the politics and the logistics of the company interfered. You cannot go in a population without reading their sheet. You can't go into a homeless crack house without knowing their diagnosis. You need to know their status. You need to know their history. All due respect, I understand as a woman, as a Latino, as a petite woman, they were kind of being safe, if you will, but I didn't see it that way. So I would go into these places unarmed, 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night, banging on doors to see if they're surviving. I'll never forget, I walked into one house where nobody would go to this house for whatever reason. I walked into the house, it was probably about 7 in the morning, knocked on the door opened, and it was quiet. Walked in, checked around, I saw the place was completely trashed. There were fly papers with millions of flies in it, and I saw the gentleman on the floor, barely surviving. Only to find out a few minutes when I leaned to see if he was breathing, 5 other gentlemen came out half naked, ready to attack him. This is the problem with the society, that people cause you for your mistakes and you're misunderstood as opposed to being not understood and not helped. We need to serve our fellow humans. We are a human race. We are all the same. We've all had the book of life of understanding confusion, regret, betrayal, loss, making mistakes, not being in the right state of mind. But to prosecute and judge someone and not give them the help or that chance, that's not the human way. That's not the way we're taught. That's not how our Creator wants us. So then that brings me to the next stage, which is called, actually this is backwards, pardon me. Empowerment should be 5. So going from left to right, it should be 5, 6, 7, 8, pardon me. So empowerment. So looking at empowerment, we are talking about understanding how to manifest, manage your energy, frequency, passion, and persistency within. Again, on your sheet, it's marked 8, it's supposed to be 5. Mm-hmm. So that made me figure out, all right, maybe social work and psychology isn't the way I want to continue my life. Following on somebody's rules, do as I say, not as I do. This is this economic status, this is this religion, this is this background. We can't help them. They don't want to help themselves. I had a real problem with that. And that is why today I still cringe when people say it is what it is, because it doesn't have to be. We have a choice. We have a choice every single day to choose to say to that loved one who's sitting on the couch, woe is me, depressed, wasting their life away, hey, I'm okay, and really mean it. Listening to them. We don't know what's going on in each other's mind. At an early age, I was sexually abused, and I couldn't face my parents. How do I tell them this was happening? They give me a chance of life. They make life look like it's sunshine and rainbows, and I have to share this with them. When I shared with my parents, at first it was frustrating. It was a jagged pill to swallow. They didn't know how to help, but they sent me to someone to speak to help. And what happened? That person said to me, as I'm pouring my heart out, empowering myself, saying I can do more and be more, but this is what happened. That person said, maybe you were just seeking attention.
What?
Wow, like my daughter's lawyer said.
Maybe you were seeking attention. So now, not only the first half of my life am I trying to fill the identity of being abandoned, feeling untrustworthy. How can I love? That's the mindset you have as a 7-year-old when your peers are telling you, you don't look like your parents. How are you going to love? How are you going to trust somebody? How are you going to have a relationship? Fast forward a few years later, I'm in the field. I'm on one side of the desk helping people. this happens, I go on the other side of the desk, maybe you're seeking attention. What do you do with that?
That's called patriarchy.
Yeah. So I told my parents, this is what this person said. And they said, we won't have you talk to them anymore. We can't wrap our head around what has happened, but we're here for you. So I delved a little deeper. If I'm not seeking attention, let me peel away that layer. What was maybe the intent that this person was saying, seeking attention. Then my mind went back to abandonment. Was I maybe cuddling or maybe talking to a person for so long that I caused it? How am I going to do this? So then what has happened was I had to discipline. Module 7. Discipline. Avoid distractions. Stay focused, as you had mentioned earlier on. Stay focused, finish and move forward. I had to learn how to achieve personal freedom through the healing power of forgiveness. Everybody says in society, forgive, forget. No. You can't forget. It's traumatic, it's dramatic, and there are certain situations where you don't want to survive anymore. You want to thrive. You don't want to be a victim anymore. You want to be victorious. So the discipline I chose as I moved outside the social work and psychology realms was the holistic and wellness. I learned that we can heal ourselves with our mind over matter, with the focus where energy goes, focus where energy flows, focus goes. Think about it. A simple analogy is if one of us here, or maybe not do this test, but on the playground, a child says, I have to go to the bathroom. What happens? Within 5 to 10 minutes, everybody has to go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. When you buy a new car, you look at what you mentioned this last time. You buy a new car, you buy, I don't know, a Honda. All of a sudden you see Hondas everywhere you go. Your energy, your focus goes where energy flows. So in order for me to look at my life going backwards, as Steve Jobs says, connect the dots backwards, you'll understand why you are where you are today. I realized I'm not a victim anymore. I need to take these experiences and make them valuable. How do I do that? How do I share? How do I be vulnerable when I already was vulnerable and they said I'm seeking attention? Well, I shifted those words. I am going to be vulnerable so I can seek attention to serve others. So as I was going through this journey of discipline, of really honing in to what my mission was, my mother fell ill. And she was that type of mother where I would tell her everything and anything. You know, those types of moms where she already knows what you're going to say before you say it, or are you those moms who know what they're going to say 2 steps before your children say it? And I was realizing as we were going through the stages of life that towards a certain part of her life, her mom fell ill, but it was due to old age. And it was ready, we kind of knew it was ready for that crossover. But what happened was, my mom directed her focus to her mother and lost focus on herself. And to fast forward, we can all see where this is going. Right after I got married, we were celebrating their birthday. My parents' birthday are 2 weeks apart, and it was a milestone of their birthdays. So we did a surprise birthday party, and it was everyone from their childhood to their present day. And I remember calling my father. My parents are never late. And I said, Dad, where are you? It's 5 minutes away. Not today, dear. Mom's not feeling well. I said, well, and not to be selfish, but I've got 70 plus people here to celebrate your birthdays. He hung up the phone and said, I'll be right there. He wheeled my mom into the room, and she was there, and my father was there, and everybody celebrated. They came to her, sharing their stories, their new spouses, their new jobs. You know, when we had a party, everybody showed up. And that night, I remember sitting there with her, and she's like, you know what? These are the cards that I was dealt, but I'm okay with it. I made the best of it. I have no regrets. I put everything I need to do into perspective. Less than 48 hours. I'm getting ready for the second shift of my job. Knock on the door, come upstairs, and I looked at my beloved, and he said, your mom's gone. Mom's gone. What do you do? So, all of my empowerment, those steps, went backwards, and I went to mind over matter, and I said, did I send her an early repast? Was I the cause that allowed her to say, it's okay, you can cross over now? And I, for 2 years straight, I went to her gravesite, state of emergency, sleep, snow, whatever, talking to this stone. Why are you gone? Why aren't you here? I'm supposed to have the best years now. Until a family member said, she's not there. She's here. That's when I turned discipline into application. I said, my mom created a legacy with my father to love unconditionally. To be the best version of yourself and give your best, because that's all you can give. And what happened was I then learned how to heal myself through wellness, learned how to heal myself through nutrition, learned how to heal myself personally. Just a little tidbit. When she crossed over, I just went to tunnel vision. Only to realize, almost a decade later, I was in the hospital, on my hospital bed, on my last days. I have incurred and endured autoimmune conditions all the way up until that point. I went to work, it was fine, boom, it hit me. She's gone. She's gone. I ended up, whatever, I think I passed out or something. I was in the hospital unit on ICU. I couldn't speak.
Excuse me, how long passed?
Almost 10 years later
Almost
after she.
10 years, then you had that memory back and make you go to the hospital?
Yep.
Oh, man.
And what happened was I wasn't taking my care of myself before because I was in denial. I was in regret. I was in anger. I was in frustration mode. So just to give you an idea, not to spoil the book or anything, but I endured rheumatoid arthritis, appendectomy to almost immediate removal of my appendix because it almost burst, 7 ulcers on my gallbladder where they had to immediately remove it, osteopenia, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, exercise-induced asthma, and then the cream of the crop, the universe and God was just like, all right, you're not, boom, lights out. I was on stage 5 myasthenia gravis. Mind you, less than 24 hours, I was fine. Until, boom, it hit me, the reality that I faced, she's gone. So when we look at individuals who are suffering, when we look at individuals who've endured pain, rather than judge, rather than isolate, empower, don't enable. be that light in their world. Listen. Ask them, put your hand on their shoulder. Are you okay? Because a quick exercise, real quick, before we get to the last one. I'm doing okay on time? Before a quick exercise is, and if you've seen me before, I don't know if I did on the radio, but I mentioned it the last time. I'm gonna give you three words, and I want you to think the first thing that comes to your mind. And just shout it out. Number 1, a garbage person. What do you think of when you think of that? First thing. Garbage man, yeah, garbage man. What? First 3 seconds. Okay. Go ahead.
Not too many education, not too much education.
Okay.
Helps the environment.
Anyone politician.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Number 2, you think of someone of a doctor. What do you think of? What do you think of immediately? 3 seconds. Just shout it out.
Rich,
Mm-hmm.
educated, intelligent.
Okay. Okay.
What I think.
All right.
That's what they do.
Number 3, a exotic dancer. 1, an exotic dancer, stripper, male or female. 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3.
Hard to be.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna do a reality check. Everything you've said, you've just judged somebody else. So erase that. Because we are doing the things that we don't want done to us. Because we are Latinas, we are the nurturers of the family, the caregivers, the strong women, the women who really empathize with emotion, but can't be successful. Why would you be in the legal field? What, you just want to sit behind a desk? Why would you want to be on the radio? You should be home cooking. Why do you want to be whatever? So on and so forth. So this is the mind over matter. We need to start having awareness. Every time we look at someone in our path, on the street, in our family, in our business, if they're having a rough day, what's the mindset that they're having? I had a boss say, leave your crap at the door and work. Well, if you can do that, then kudos to you. Because if we don't face our past will continue to chase us. If we don't forgive that person who has wronged us in our childhood, in our company, that person you meet on the street that has that demeanor, that characteristic, that mannerism, boom, runs you right there, and you either love them or you disown them. And that brings me to the final segment, which is mastery. And I was going to say it in Spanish, so viva, okay, I can't read that. Viva tu vida.
You can turn it around too.
For the English.
Okay, yeah. Okay, live your life on your terms and make your dreams become a reality.